I believe you're looking at the next Vice President of the United States.
There had never been a vice president quite like Dick Cheney. On some of the defining issues of his time, Cheney's views often became American policy. He was a polarizing figure, beloved by conservatives and vilified by the left, compared to a Star Wars villain.
They wouldn't call me Darth Vader for nothing.
He did more than anyone, with the possible exception of the president he served, to craft America's response to the September 11th attacks. He favored aggressive actions against suspected terrorists and was unapologetic about the use of harsh tactics, including waterboarding, which many regarded as torture.
I was a big supporter of waterboarding. I was a big supporter of the enhanced interrogation techniques.
Despite his decades in Washington, Cheney considered himself a Westerner at heart. Richard Bruce Cheney was born in Nebraska in 1941. Cheney's first big job in Washington was working for President Gerald Ford's Chief of Staff, Donald Rumsfeld. And when Rumsfeld was named Secretary of Defense, Cheney, just 34 years old, became the youngest person to hold the title of White House Chief of Staff. After Jimmy Carter defeated Ford in the 1976 presidential election, Cheney returned to Wyoming and ran for Congress, ended up serving 5 terms in the House of Representatives. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush nominated Cheney to be Secretary of Defense.
Dick Cheney is a trusted friend and advisor, and I'm convinced that he's going to be a great leader of our nation's military forces.
He won praise for his leadership of Operation Desert Storm, a multi-nation coalition that liberated Kuwait. Cheney then turned to the private sector and made millions as the CEO of the oil industry construction firm Halliburton. In the summer of 2000, Cheney agreed to help George W. Bush conduct a search for a running mate. Bush would narrow his short list to one, Dick Cheney himself.
I picked him because he is without a doubt fully capable of being the President of the United States.
During the 2000 Florida recount, Cheney returned to Washington, where he chaired the Bush presidential transition, putting together the government for the incoming administration, setting the stage for him to become the most influential vice president in American history. It was the September 11 terrorist attacks that would define a new era for the nation and Cheney's role in the administration. With President Bush traveling, it was Cheney who was in the White House Situation Room during the September 11th attacks, giving the military the order to shoot down any unresponsive aircraft. Cheney became the architect of America's war on terror, the fight against al-Qaeda.
Well, we're going to spend time in the shadows and in the intelligence world. A lot of what needs to be done here will have to be done quietly, without any discussion, using sources and methods that are available to our intelligence agencies if we're going to be successful. That's the world these folks operate in. And so it's going to be vital for us to use any means at our disposal basically, to achieve our objective.
Less than a month after September 11th, the U.S. launched attacks against al-Qaeda and its Taliban allies in Afghanistan, capturing members of the terrorist group with information on the planning and execution of the attacks. He advocated the use of warrantless wiretapping, the expansion of executive privilege, and enhanced interrogation techniques, which critics said amounted to torture and violated the Geneva Convention.
They don't deserve to be treated as a prisoner of war. They don't deserve the same guarantees and safeguards that would be used for an American citizen going through the normal judicial process.
Cheney was also a driving force behind the removal of Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. He played a central role in making the case for the 2003 invasion of Iraq, arguing that Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction.
Simply stated, there is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us.
Despite subsequent revelations that there were no weapons of mass destruction, Cheney said the decision to go to war against Iraq was the right one.
We got rid of one of the worst dictators of the 20th century. We took down his government.
In later years, Cheney broke with the far right on several issues, including same-sex marriage.
As many of you know, one of my daughters is gay, and something that we've lived with for a long time in our family. I think
people ought to be free to enter into any kind of union they wish, any kind of arrangement they wish.
And Cheney was a sharp critic of President Trump's actions on and before January 6th, standing by his daughter Liz, then a member of Congress from Wyoming, on the first anniversary of the attack, condemning the former president in a campaign video he shot for his daughter during the 2022 midterm elections.
Liz is fearless. She never backs down from a fight. There is nothing more important she will ever do than lead the effort to make sure Donald Trump is never again near the Oval Office.
In 2024, the lifelong Republican endorsed Democrat Vice President Kamala Harris over Trump, saying Trump should never be trusted with power again after January 6th, and that Americans each have a duty to put country above partisanship to defend our Constitution.
How is Dick Cheney going to be remembered?
I saw a lot of history, was there when a lot of it was made, and I'll always be tremendously grateful for having had that opportunity. But in terms of how I performed, some people will agree with it. I run into them all the time. I also run into people that didn't like what I did or why I did it. But I'm very comfortable with what I did and why I did it and how I did it, and I'll let others judge whether they liked it or not.
Do you have any regrets?
Not really.
Not really. Classic Dick Cheney. When he endorsed Kamala Harris, it wasn't simply remarkable for his endorsement of a Democrat for the first time in his entire life, but what he said about Donald Trump. He said, quote, "In our nation's 248-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He can never be trusted with power again." And he was a man of few words. I will never forget, Robin, when I was covering the Bush campaign in 2000, and I had heard that Dick Cheney had changed his registration to vote in Wyoming, which would have been a requirement effectively for him to be the running mate. He was running the search for a running mate, and I got his home phone number. I called him up at home, and he answered. And I said, "So is this true? Are you actually under consideration? Are you a leading candidate now to be the running mate?" And he just answered, "Yep." And that was it.
That was it. Man, a few words. Man, a few words.
Yeah.
How do you think he will be remembered?
You know, I mean, it's a complicated legacy. He will be remembered certainly for his role in protecting America after 9/11, for that big mistake that America made in the war with Iraq, and absolutely as being a patriot and a defender of American democracy until his last days.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, John. Appreciate it very much.